I am Zunaira Azhar and you're watching Epicenter, where we dissect, analyze and help understand major domestic and global stories. This week has been a week of terror for Pakistan as we witnessed deadly attacks on Chinese nationals working on a dam project. This was a third major attack on Chinese interests in Pakistan. First two were targeted at a naval base and the strategic port of Gwadar in Balochistan. As China demands effective measures to protect the Chinese personnel in Pakistan, we would discuss how this threat spectrum in Pakistan and the region as a whole is getting enlarged and what are our options to combat it. We would also be looking at the government's catch-22 situation when it comes to making major decisions, and a letter from the 6 jurists of the Islamabad High Court with serious accusations leveled against the spy agency of Pakistan. To discuss this, we have a panel of experts with us that includes Fahad Hussain, senior journalist and political analyst, and Mohammad Malick, also a senior journalist and political analyst. Fahad, straight coming to you, Chinese investigators have arrived. And there will be a joint probe into these attacks. Meanwhile, the projects have been halted for a while. Are we looking at some kind of a joint investigation into this new surge of attacks on the Chinese interests in Pakistan?
Yes, I do believe that there will absolutely be the participation of the Chinese team, not just in terms of optics at this particular stage, but at a deeper level. I say that because I think from the Chinese are also realizing that this series of attacks is not stopping, despite all the assurances given by Pakistan and despite all the measures that Pakistan has taken. Now, a couple of important things. Number one, I think the capacity of the Pakistani governments to deal with this very difficult challenge of providing security to Chinese in Pakistan is falling short of where it should be. This is not because the governments have not tried. The repeated measures have been put into place at the very highest level, both within the civilian setup as well as the military setup. This issue is given the topmost priority. Actions have been taken, an entire division has been raised for the protection of CPEC projects. But despite all that, such incidents continue to happen. So I think, and also let me just also add that as far as Pakistan-China relations are concerned, this issue of security has become one of the foremost issues that are discussed or that are of relevance right now. So in that particular sense, I think if the Chinese are insisting that their team be here and become part of investigations and whatever else has to happen, then I don't think the Pakistanis have a choice, and I think the government would in fact want this to happen to ensure that the government is not blamed for any other, for leniency or for not doing enough. So I think, yes, this is the new reality, and I think we have to accept that.
Okay. Mr. Malick, is this somewhat a mistrust as well when it comes to their intel team coming here and trying to do a joint kind of investigation? Is there an element of mistrust involved here from Chinese?
I don't think so. I think the way the government responded, the Prime Minister immediately went to the Chinese embassy. His cabinet members were there. Then the way the whole thing was catered to, I think there's no mistrust there, and it's just an additional, what you call an add-on. But one thing needs to be made clear. Fahad just pointed out that a division was raised for CPEC projects. I was talking for one of the relevant security people from the government, and he pointed out that this project was not part of CPEC, and that's why this Chinese team did not have military cover. They had a private security firm and stuff like that. So now there is talk going on about expanding that cover beyond CPAC. And I think that's primarily what the Chinese and Pakistani authorities are already talking about it, how to make that possible. Because it's not that simple. We have a very large population of Chinese professionals working in Pakistan right now. on non-CPEC projects, and it may be virtually impossible. But when you're looking at it from the other side, from the terrorist side, every Chinese is a target. It doesn't matter whether he's working for CPEC or he's not working for CPEC, because ultimately it will impede the CPEC projects. And forget about it, even after this thing, the extension of Trebela Dam has been stopped. That project has been stopped.
Yeah.
So this attack actually simultaneously hit three important projects of Pakistan. So, but you need to see, it's not about giving military covers. It's about making a cosmic shift, a massive shift in our strategy towards dealing both with the Taliban issue in KP and the BLA issue and others in Balochistan. How many divisions can you raise? You can't raise 200 divisions. You can't put one soldier, one military guy walking behind every Chinese engineer or foreigner working in Pakistan. What needs to be really looked at is our approach towards resolving these issues. And I think that's what we should be discussing.
Well, that's the very thing. Coming back to you, Fahad, no matter how many divisions are raised, there is a greater plot here. We have seen Moscow attacks. We have seen the rift between the Western media and the Moscow. They claim it's ISIS. They say it's someone coming from Ukraine. And now there is a global threat, and China has become part of it, and Russia has become part of it. So do you see these two countries joining Pakistan to deal with this global threat? Because it's not only about Pakistan. And even to the Pakistan, we have two angles at interplay here. There is an external element, and then there is an internal element of the Baloch insurgents. So it's quite a broad thing. It's not as easy as it looks.
It is, and I agree with Malick Saab that I think the answer is not to just raise security for project A or project B or project C, and it is next to impossible to, in fact, as you correctly pointed out, secure every Chinese or every foreign national in Pakistan. That's not the answer. That's just an immediate response. I think with each passing day, it is becoming clearer and clearer that we need to take up this entire issue of terrorism in a very holistic manner. And as you very correctly pointed out, that there are two places from where this wave of terrorism is emanating. One is, of course, Afghanistan, where TTP is based, and the other is domestic terrorism, which we are seeing in Balochistan. So clearly we need a very concerted effort. Now, obviously this is not new. This wave of terrorism hasn't developed overnight. It's been happening for a very long time. But I think now we require the kind of response that reflects the seriousness of the government of Pakistan. We are, ever since the new government is taking place, we are all talking about the economy and the major initiatives that are being taken to somehow improve our economic situation and conduct reforms, etc., etc. I think this issue of terrorism is as important, if perhaps not more important, than the issue of the economy, and therefore the same kind of focus, the same kind of holistic approach, the same kind of resolve needs to be put into battling this through a certain well-drafted, well-conceived and well-executed strategic plan. And I think we are all waiting for that to happen.
All right. Well, Mr. Malick, Washington has very clearly cautioned about the risk of engaging with Tehran when it comes to the gas pipeline. And it is an open secret that they are against the alignment with China as well when it comes to Pakistan. So this instability in the region, where the main beneficiary is China, let it be Afghanistan, let it be Pakistan, do you think this instability somehow favors Washington?
I'm sorry, I missed part of your question. Could you kindly repeat it?
Yeah. So I'm talking about Washington clearly cautioned us that there should be no engagement with Tehran, and they even talked about the sanctions. At the same time, there is a terror attack going on in Pakistan, like a wave of terror attacks in Pakistan. So the region is suffering. We know that the alignment of Pakistan with China is something that is always despised by US. So this instability in this region, this instability in Pakistan, Does this favor Washington's interest somehow?
No, you have to understand how Washington views us. For a long time now, Washington views us through the Indian prism. And while we as Pakistanis may not like it, it's perfectly comprehensible. Look at their
But we have the letter now from Joe Biden, though.
You look at the influence of the Indian diaspora there. You look at how the whole region is structured. India is being propped up, has been propped up as a counterfoil to China also. So while when you see in the larger picture, we are seen to fall in the China camp. Now, as far as the Iranian thing is concerned, Pakistan will not suffer any unneedless wrath of America or whatever, if I might call that, for an Iranian deal, because there's a great deal of mistrust between Iran and Pakistan for quite a while in the circles that matter. And while we are bound by the contractual liabilities, there's no like when we're dealing with China, we want to get those things done. In Iranian case, we are doing things that need to be done just to avoid penalties and stuff like that. So I don't think that's ever going to be a point where we would push things beyond a certain point. America has always made certain mistakes, and when it takes certain very strong positions, which shouldn't be done in diplomacy and in constantly evolving situations. But we are in a bind. You see, China is our biggest friend, strongest friend, bails us out every time, whether it's called in matters of defense technology to bailing out your rolling over of your debt and stuff like that. America is our largest export market, so we can't ignore them either. I think the real test is not how America behaves. The real test is not what Iran does. I think the real test is how does Pakistan walk the fine line. But when you have foreign ministers like Mr. Ishaq Dar,
I'll come to
I think you can't even walk a broad line. I can't even walk a broad line. Forget about a fine line.
We cannot escape any discussion really, without mentioning Mr. Dar, but I'll come to that later. Fahad,
if I could just quickly add on to what I was saying, if you allow me, the previous point. I was listening to what Malick Saab was saying, and I think when we are looking at our response to this terrorism, because we all agree that if we the best way to protect ourselves is to go after the sources of terror and tackle them from there. So essentially, I've been also talking to a lot of people to try and understand what our response could be, because it has to be a comprehensive response, not just a piecemeal reaction or reactive kind of a response. So essentially, I've been told that there are three different levels at which this response should take place. One, of course, is the issue of capacity at the provincial level. Both in KP, in Balochistan, not so much in Punjab, there are serious capacity issues with the civilian law enforcement agencies, especially the CTDs. And this problem has remained like this for a number of years, and therefore, at that particular level, at the provincial level, this reform of law enforcement, whether it is counter-terrorism departments or it is police or local intelligence, all that really needs to happen. It is far below where it should be. That's one. Second, at the federal level, I think the role of Interior Ministry and also the role of NACTA, which has been crippled for many, many years, is now crucial. And I believe that there is now a review of how NACTA can once again be made more operational, more effective, which would also be a good thing. And finally, of course, Zunaira, the issue of political will. Is there a will both in the center and the provinces to be able to take on this difficult task? And here I would like to mention the PTI government in KP, because KP, of course, is at the front lines of this. In the past, the PTI has not shown the kind of political will that is required to fight this war against terrorism. So that also is an important thing, and which is why a couple of days back, when the Interior Minister went and met the CM of KP, I think that was a welcome development.
You're spot on talking about NECTA. I think we haven't been paying attention to it as much as it deserves. And I remember the National Action Plan. It was so comprehensive, and we had results as well once we were acting on that and taking it as a foreprint of everything. But look at the foreign policy first. How are we going to balance, make a balance between the Paris Club and the China? Because we need both. And apparently we are not very good at balancing out these two figures, and we cannot survive without these two figures. So Malick, Mr. Malick, how do you look at it? Isn't it a policy flaw? We are not clear about what we want, and we are not taking enough comprehensive actions, as Fahad pointed out?
I just want to add one more thing about the early terrorism issue, because that's a very critical issue. I think the time has come that we really need to decide. For example, let's take Balochistan, for instance. Is it a security issue, or is it a development issue? Is it an awareness issue, or is it an education issue? I think we have to make a total diabolical change in our approach, the way Islamabad and Rawalpindi are approaching Balochistan. We are always told, India is putting some money in there. Every year India is Harbiar and all these guys, India is spending millions of dollars. One Gulf country has been, otherwise supposedly a friend, but that is also pumping a few $1 million every year because they don't want Gwadar to be a rival port and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Okay, so if India is putting $40 million, $50 million, I think we can spend more money. What's the population of Balochistan? It's hardly a little over 7 million. And look at the backwardness there. It's a culling field for terrorism. I have traveled very extensively in Balochistan, and believe me, I'm not talking about far-flung areas. Even when you just come out of Quetta and all, you see malnourished children, you see everything going down the drain. And when you go deeper into Balochistan, people openly say, what is there for us except the Ferrari economics? Now, what is the Ferrari economics? We have what people we call Ferraris. Somebody's coming in, he's buying a little petrol, he's getting his bike fixed, taking a cup of tea while he puts his gun on the side, and this guy has no option but to service him because this is his only source of income. There was no plan to create clusters of populations. There was no plan to create some smaller cities. There's nothing going on the front of development or something like that. 7 million, 7.5 million, how much does it take to really fix it? Let's see the politics thing right now. You have governments formed in Sindh, KP, Balochistan, federal government, Punjab. Voila, any surprise? Where's the cabinet still not formed? Balochistan. Now, when something works like that, whether it's in terms of our approach towards it, seeing it as a security paradigm, no, it's not. It's simply a development thing. I've talked to at least 3-4 corps commanders who served there. Now, but when they're serving there, it's a different approach. When they leave, then it's a different approach. Everybody talks about development, but still it keeps a security. We see it through a security lens. You talk to politicians, everybody talks about development. Two things need to happen in Balochistan if we need to stop terrorism over there. A, let genuine people come up, genuine leadership, not installed leadership, not hand-picked leadership. Let genuine political leadership come up and make development the solution. It's mid-term to long-term. It's boring. It cannot be measured in 3-year terms. You see, the problem is the Prime Minister sees at everything with a 5-year time frame. Army Chief sees things with a 3-year time frame. They all need to evolve some results, some tangibles. No. Balochistan cannot be solved with a 3-year time frame or a 5-year time frame. Things will improve within 3 years and 5 years, but it has to be seen in the longer perspective of development and genuine political leadership. And that's when you remove the real support basis for these terrorisms. It's not the few millions of dollars that's causing the problem. It are these issues causing the problems. Similarly in KP, when we look at it, when we're dealing with Taliban, I've been talking to a lot of former and present people who are dealing with Afghan Taliban and everything. We've always talked about strategic depth. Pakistan's strategic depth in Afghanistan, a notion that's jaded now. There's a strategic concept that is the Afghan Taliban. They think that a time is going to come when they're going to be attacked again. They're already having a lot of internal problems. There are at least
Right.
4 other global terrorist organizations there. And their fallback is Pakistan in those such times. And we have to see things in a certain context. So we need to have massive approach changes towards KP, Afghanistan, and towards Balochistan. I think a lot of animosity is being built up, and a lot of tempers are being raised, and a strong public opinion is being formed against the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. We need to really recalibrate our things and see it in the larger perspective.
Well, we'll take a break here and we come back to discuss how the hardliner approach of Taliban is back in Afghanistan. And the world has become irrelevant, and we are certainly paying the price. And we will talk about the policy towards Afghanistan, towards Iran, and towards this new threat of terror, whether the old policy is going to work or something new is on the table for this new government, after a short break. Welcome back to Epicenter once again, and diving back straight into the discussion. Fahad, Malick thinks it's all about development security conundrum. We have to be decisive and we have to be more clear on it. What is it that needs precedence? What is your opinion? Is it the policy that is failing? Is it the resolve that is too superficial? Because too often we see things happening like going to an ambassador and saying stuff and not doing the actual footwork that needs to be done. Do you think there is a policy failure or there is a resolve that is actually absent?
Well, if you're talking specifically about terrorism, then clearly I think it's a bit of both. As I was saying earlier, we are seeing a failure of resolve or a weakening of resolve or almost an absence of resolve in the KP government. PTI has been ruling KP for a decade now, and we've seen how they have always maintained a very soft, almost an apologetic stance towards TTP, and therefore we've seen the inroads that have happened there. We've seen the inability of the provincial setup to actually combat this terrorism. Number two, of course, policy. Of course, you know, we've seen ups and downs. We've seen initiatives and then reversals. I mean, how can we forget? It was only about a year and a half, 2 years back that the policy was to make peace with TTP, to bring them back and resettle them in society. And actually, much of it happened. Many of them came back, and now they are a part of our society.
Yeah.
So failed policies that are made in isolation, policies that do not have the kind of buy-in that it should from amongst all stakeholders, they're bound to fail and then explode in our faces. So that's happened. Anyways, now all that is in the past. We are now faced with this renewed spate of terrorism. We are also faced with new challenges where it is absolutely clear that the TTA are not willing to take any action against TTP. We are also very clear that in Balochistan, whatever we've tried to do, it hasn't produced the kind of results that we hoped it would. Now, whether it is development, whether it is pumping in money into Balochistan, or whether it is trying to solve the issue with force, we've tried all of those. If you look back the last 10 years or so, everything has been tried. So clearly there is a problem. There is some absence of that missing link or the ingredient which is not allowing the Pakistani governments or the Pakistani state to be able to settle Balochistan the way that it should be. And that brings me to my original point that at this particular time we really need to re-look this entire issue of terrorism like we are re-looking at the economy. I mean, the economy, we are trying to do the kind of things that we've not done before, or at least that's what we are hearing, that we are going to do structural reforms, that we are going to do the privatization that was always resisted, that we are doing taxation reform, we are going after retailers, all those things that we always talked about but never did. Now at least we're talking about that. Similarly, I think we need to relook at this entire approach towards terrorism and see where we've gone wrong, why we've gone wrong, and what we need to do if we really need to overcome this very serious challenge.
But Fahad, I think part of it is internal thing. Of course, we have to look at it. But we are looking at transnational kind of terrorism. It's a global threat. It's a new reality. Nobody was ready for it, not even Russia, not even China. Do you think Pakistan has the capacity to deal with it on its own?
I don't think any country can deal with such a challenge alone, especially when the threat is transnational, as you said. Therefore, I think part of our response needs to be a diplomatic one. How do we deal with TTP? What do we tell China? How do we bring in Russia? What do we talk to the US on? How do we deal with ISKP issue? All of these are regional issues, transnational issues, and part of our response, or perhaps one of the most important aspects of our response, of our strategy, of our plan, should be to somehow bring in all the key stakeholders to help Pakistan in tackling this challenge, because of course many of these countries are affected by terrorism, but perhaps none as much as we have.
Yeah.
So therefore, we have the biggest stake in trying to tackle this problem, overcome this problem with the help of others.
Okay. Mr. Malick, there was a statement of Defense Minister Khaja Asif circulating on X that said that we do not want an armed conflict with Afghanistan. That said, there was another statement, and in that he said that we hold Afghanistan accountable directly for the surge in terrorism in Pakistan. At the same time, we are talking of bilateral trade. Isn't it all so conflicting?
I don't know if there's anything known as ex-diplomacy. So I find these statements very disturbing, because who are these statements for? Are they for public consumption? Are they for the Afghans? Are they for who? So I think we really need to be very clear how we deal with and who we deal with. There's a certain mannerism, and you can't take out cultural things out of the equation. When you deal with Chinese, there's a certain decorum which is demanded by their culture. Similarly, there's a certain ways of thinking and cultural behaviors that are very peculiarly Afghans. So I think we are unfortunately mixing the drinks here in a lot of cases. Our political leadership also needs to be very careful. There are kinetic actions required. We have done that. They've had certain desired results. So Pakistan has to move with a very careful policy of carrot and stick. Mm-hmm. You cannot, but we need to be sure about one thing. You do not humiliate Afghans in public. You can attack them, you can do whatever. But I think we should desist from the policy of, humiliating them publicly or insulting them. It does have a different cultural response.
Right. We'll try to tap some domestic realities, the hardcore political realities, when it comes to a specific letter that has been lettered by 6 jurists regarding the meddling of spy agency of Pakistan into the judicial affairs, after a short break. Welcome back to Epicenter once again. Fahad, I'll come straight to you. How strictly serious are these allegations? And I say this because this comes from the jurists, the judges, that too 6 of a high court. How do you look at it?
Well, absolutely. There is no doubt about the fact that these are very, very serious allegations, not just because 6 judges of the Islamabad High Court have signed on to them, but that they've actually gone into very specific details of what transpired. Mm-hmm. So this is not a generalized kind of a letter. It is not a complaint which is based on hearsay. It is linked to very specific, very serious and very grave incidents that are reported to have happened. Now, the larger issue is two, in my opinion, are 2. Number one, why did these judges wait for so long before actually resorting to this. This is one complaint that one
everybody
is
is talking
very
about
frequently.
Yeah.
And I think there is a very reasonable answer to that. The answer is that every time these incidents happened, we know that they were documented, that they were reported to either the Chief Justice of the Islamabad, the High Court, or later to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Letters were written, etc., etc. So from what I can understand, it's not that these judges waited because they wanted to stay quiet. I think they waited because they probably hoped that this issue would be resolved at the level where it should have.
Yeah, okay.
Only when it wasn't that I think they resorted to this very unprecedented act of actually writing an open letter to the Supreme Court. That's one. Second is now the response from the Supreme Court or the government. The commission is obviously, the formation of a commission to be headed by a retired judge is not as potent or strong a response as perhaps
it could have been.
Supreme Court. For example, if the Supreme Court or the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court could have taken a suo motu notice. So clearly there is now a debate, and one can talk about the response and why the Supreme Court then threw the ball in the federal government's court. But I think the overall issue is alive. It is being given the kind of seriousness that it should be, and I think now we have to see what concrete action transpires as a result of this very unprecedented step.
Mr. Malick, how do you look at the response from the executive side, the government? How do you look at it?
I think it's a combination of a year-long process that has happened. And I have a feeling that maybe the tipping point, why these guys came out at this point the way they did, that tipping point may not be part of that letter right now. We don't know what somebody might have gone through, something so horrific or so, red line might have been crossed that they did not want to bring it on record, and maybe thought they would bring it up later. I mean, it just might happen. But everybody's in a fix. Commission, if you read the letter, the last letter very closely, it accuses the executive of carrying out this policy of intimidation and everything, and accuses the intelligence agencies of implementing and executing it.
Yeah.
So the real accusation is not against the agencies,
executive.
it's the executive.
Yeah.
And now the main accused is suddenly deciding, okay, I'm going to appoint a particular person to head a commission and do the inquiry. So it's not going to settle matters. Secondly, very interestingly, when the Prime Minister called on the Chief Justice of Pakistan, and after the meeting there was a long presser by the Law Minister and the Attorney General, it transpires when later the Supreme Court communique came out that the most important thing was missing from the Law Minister's press briefing, and that was that the Chief Justice had stressed, now the communique says, he stressed that you have to first implement the Dharna Commission, clause 53, para 53 of Dharna Commission report. The Dharna Commission report that was done by the commission that was headed by Justice Faiz Issa.
Yeah.
Now what is that? What is that portion that talks about being taken action against all those involved in Dharna Commission? Very interestingly, the Law Minister did not even talk about it because he knew a lot of questions would be asked by the media. Why was that silence there? Why was that thing not highlighted till the Supreme Court communique came out? So we're seeing already a lot of fault lines. There are a lot of fault lines in there. And this case is very different, Zunaira, because in this case, the 6 judges are both victims. They have claimed to be witnesses and victims. These are not generalized, like pointed out by Fahad. These are not generalized statements.
Very specific allegations are there.
Specific. And one of the other guys being shafted in these 2 letters, especially the letter written in May 2023, is the Chief Justice himself of Islamabad High Court. Now that's very interesting. One incident that's quoted in the last letter says that a presiding judge over a case in one Imran Khan case had one opinion. The other 2 judges, when they submitted their draft opinions, they immediately were hounded by intelligence agencies and blah, blah, blah. Now, what is the accusation? Indirect. What is the implication in there? It's been implied that the presiding judge, who was the Chief Justice himself, leaked that thing, apparently leaked their drafts to the intelligence agencies or to the executive, and their lives turned hell. So there are serious accusations within the institution. There are serious accusations across the institution. It doesn't stop at intelligence agencies. The primary target is the executive. So I think a one-member commission is not going to cut it. And it has a lot more to it, and the way the Chief Justice has intervened. He has moved himself away from it, although everybody is of the opinion there should have been a judicial hearing of this thing. Ideally, like Raj Hassan Saab said in my show and other people, that maybe you could have 9 or 13 judges looking at it. It was not a matter that is going to involve month-long investigations. There's a lot of corroborating evidence, everything. Even a 9 or 13-member bench could have dealt with it in 3 days and come to a conclusion or whatever. But it had to be judiciary-led. Right now, it's been executive-led, which is the main accused itself. So it's not going to work. It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away like this.
Well, Fahad, why do you think Chief Justice is shying away from his primary responsibility to protect his own judges? And two, how vulnerable this whole thing makes these 6 judges, to be honest, keeping everything in mind that there is coercion involved, there is intimidation involved, and I'm not going into the details further. So how vulnerable are those people? Sorry.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Hard to tell, how the Chief Justice is looking at it. All we can do is look at what has happened so far. The Chief Justice has had 2 full court meetings, which essentially means that he's taken on board everybody. We don't know exactly what happened in those meetings, but clearly, whatever decision has been taken, and the main decision, of course, being the formation of the commission. So one would assume that as a result of those full court meetings, the majority of the opinion within those meetings supported the commission. I mean, I would find it very hard to believe that the Chief Justice would overrule the majority opinion amongst all the judges present and then go ahead with a minority decision. So, and of course, I'm just assuming this, but assuming this to be true, it means that the Supreme Court, or at least the majority amongst the Supreme Court judges, feel that forming a commission right now is the best course of action. Now, let me play the devil's advocate. Why could it be the best course of action? Number one, I think it will provide the executive a certain responsibility to come up with some action to address the complaints or the very serious complaints in the letter. Number one. Number two, I think it will depend on who is the person who is finally made the head of this commission. If it is somebody who enjoys widespread respect, which is actually very difficult in today's Pakistan, but still in a manner of speaking and relatively speaking, and if the TORs are wide-ranging and specific and give a lot of powers to the judge, then perhaps one could expect some action or some strong recommendations which would then will then need to be implemented by the government. All this while, the Supreme Court retains the option of stepping in as and when required. So perhaps in their own wisdom, the Supreme Court judges are wanting the executive to first take whatever action it can, and then step in at a later stage if so required. I mean, that's the only reason that I can think of.
All right. Mr. Malick, no matter how well equipped any commission is, if the sitting judges feel intimidated, if they think that there is a meddling in their business, then how come a retired judge or any respected person can have all those powers that we actually assume actually should be with the CJ or with the Prime Minister? I don't understand this. How are we expecting a commission to decide this very live and active conflict within two institutions, judiciary and executive?
No, I don't think that's an issue really. It depends again, like Fahad pointed out, It depends on who's heading the commission and what are the TORs. Now, if the commission is headed by somebody like Justice Nasrul Mulk or somebody of his ilk, there are highly respected people who are non-controversial. And the commission draws its power from the law. And I was also hearing some debate on different television shows.
But we are talking of intimidation here.
No, we'll come to that. So first, let's talk about the commission. So there was, I heard discussions about how it's going to be a retired judge, interviewing sitting judges and all that. We're talking about a senior Supreme Court Chief Justice or a justice and an old hand at things, whose otherwise has remained senior to all the presently serving lot. So he would know how to talk to them. That is not an issue. Intimidation is a different issue. I think we have seen in the past also that whenever judges have taken a unified front, it becomes virtually very, very difficult for any dispensation to take them on without turning the system upside down. Maintaining the system, working in a so-called democratic structure, there is a point to which you can push the judges. And like we saw in Musharraf's days, then we saw the judicial crisis. Either you have martial law, and then you can do whatever you want, but if you have even quasi-democracy, you can do things to a certain point. So that's where this whole thing is coming down to. Is there a standoff between judiciary and the army or the army intelligence? Let's not beat around the bush. That's what the judges are talking about. And they've named the premier agency allegedly being involved in all these things. So have we reached a deadlock between the two? I don't think so. Is there a standoff? Yes, there is a standoff. Is there a buffer right now? Yes, what the executive does, how it plays both sides, we might see a simmering down of stuff like that. Can things go on the way they have been going? No, they can't go on the way they have been going on. One important question that remained unanswered in the judge's letter and all that was, which I really would like to know, were any judgments actually changed or not? Because the sense that I get from those letters is there was a lot of pressure, a lot of exploitation, harassment, everything, but they stood their ground. Now, if the judges can stand their ground while all these things were seen away from the public eye, when all this harassment and all this, sad, unfortunate incidents were happening, absolute, I would say, badmashi of the agencies and all that. So, do you think the agencies can do more now that everything is out in the open? I don't think so. Now, everybody's in a spotlight. So, I don't feel that scared for the judges now. I think the real issue is, are we looking at a midterm to a long-term standoff between judiciary and the establishment? That is more important. A lot of cases are still in courts, and those cases have clear political ramifications. And I think the establishment will also be looking at it from that point of view. How far can the judges be pushed? Because if you go beyond a certain point, they can come back, and if the judges strike back, you can have a very massive political confusion in the country, trust me.
All right. Fahad, my last question to you. Do you see a divide between the judges and the Chief Justice?
No, I don't see that happening right now. I'm looking at this in a slightly different manner. See, what we have right now is possibly some sort of what we're talking about is some sort of an institutional conflict, and that were to happen if the entire judiciary were to stand up together and say we are absolutely going to take some action to ensure this doesn't happen. Now, perhaps that's desirable. We can talk about that, but the reality on the ground is slightly different. What do I mean by that? Right now, these are the very early days of the new government, and there is a very, very unsaid, quiet, almost sort of silent consensus between three major stakeholders within our system. I'm talking about the Prime Minister, the establishment, and the judiciary.
Yeah.
There is no active conflict. The fault lines which normally develop between these three institutions are not visible. And specifically, even if you look at the superior judiciary, you don't see anything which would suggest that they're about to go after either the executive or the establishment. There seems to be some sort of a quiet consensus that there should be no turbulence within the system. Now, if you look at the issue of this letter by the judges within this larger context, then when you look at the response, it begins to make sense. Nobody is looking for a conflict. Nobody wants this system to be ruptured so early in the tenure of a new government where everybody wants to achieve a lot. So in that particular, in this context, I think I would agree with Malick Saab that the very fact that this letter has been written is in itself a deterrence for further such action. Now, but the letter is now being followed up by a commission. The commission will have hearings, more information will come out. So I think the deterrent value has already kicked in, and perhaps the system might absorb that and somehow quietly ensure that such things are not happen again. In fact, in many ways, I think that should be our hope also.
Well, that's my hope as well, and that concludes today's discussion. Thank you very much, Fahad Hussain. Thank you very much, Mohammad Malick. And this is Zunaira Azhar signing out from Epicenter.